Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today, Mondays with Michael live here in the Training Solutions Facebook room. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I do want to give a special shout out to our veterans who support us by putting their life on the line every day and who help make this country great. This weekend was Veterans Day weekend. It's always a really, really nice weekend in general, although especially here in the Washington, D.C. area because we have so many veterans who live, work, raise their families here in Northern Virginia, and either are engaged in military activities right now, are deployed, or who are retired and still engaged in veterans issues here in our community. So thank you for all those who have served. Thank you to all those who are currently serving. And for those of you in the room today, welcome to the room. So today's topic today is communication. We thought we would have a session around communication in the workplace. What I'm seeing from a communication perspective in the workplace, some of the challenges I'm seeing with organizations, and at least one or two of the tools we use in helping individuals better communicate with each other in the organization. So when we talk about communication, obviously there are several ways to communicate with your fellow workers. There's that face-to-face interaction communication. Body language becomes very important in that process, but it's also what you say and how you say it. There's phone communication and how you present yourself over the phone and talk on the phone, ask questions, get feedback, also very important on the phone. There's communication via online, whether it's via email, which is a lot of how people communicate in the workplace, or similar to what we're doing now. More and more of our clients are using Skype or some type of video conferencing to communicate with each other. We even do some training classes from time to time using some electronic video means. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate with people in the workplace today. And why is that important? Why is communicating with each other important? Well, as we go back, as we've talked about a couple times here in the room, the old days of working at your workstation by yourself and your only real relationship you have is with your boss. We're talking old school here, where the boss-employee relationship was the only relationship and communication you really had. Though you may converse with others in the workplace, whether it be socially around the water cooler, coffee break room, or even the lunchroom, the real workplace communication that was important to you was the relationship you have with your boss. Because at the end of the year, your boss was responsible for putting together your year-end evaluation and also responsible for your pay increase or lack thereof. So the really communicating you needed to do and the relationship you needed really to build was that with your boss. But today, obviously that's changed. You need to be able to communicate with a whole variety of people, whether it's members of your team, your actual work team, whatever team you're working on, whether it's with your boss or bosses, because a lot of people that we work with today aren't just working for one boss, they're working with several bosses. Whether you're working with customers, and most folks today that are working with customers are dealing with a wide variety of customers. And they deal with them in different ways, whether they deal with them online, whether they deal with them face-to-face. And then, of course, is communicating with those that report to you. So if you're a boss, your employees are also communicating to you. So there are a lot of different formats and ways that people communicate in the workplace. So you're not going to be able to sit at your desk by yourself on your own and not communicate. So let's talk a little about how we communicate with each other. Let's start with that face-to-face interaction, that peer-to-peer boss-employee interaction. So whether it's a problem solving or whether it's dealing with a client or solving a conflict issue, our ability to present ourselves and present our ideas to others is very, very important. And how do we do that? Well, there are several ways we can do that. One is to pre-plan the communication. And I work with a lot of folks I coach, a lot of executives I coach, that for some reason, unbeknownst to me, they kind of fly by the hip. They go with their gut. They go whatever they feel like saying in a particular situation, they just blurt it out. And we work with a lot of those folks on toning that back down a little bit, that really preparing your communication before you interact with another team member, your boss, or better yet, even your customer. So having kind of a preparation as far as what you're going to talk about, it can be very, very important in making that conversation successful. But what are the things you need to worry about when it comes to communicating with others? Well, we've always heard the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated in life, and whether that's inside the workplace or outside the workplace. And in some aspects of life, that's probably a good idea. But we're finding out that people behave differently at workplace. They communicate differently at workplace. Some folks communicate at a very rapid, quick pace. Some folks communicate at a more reserved pace. Some folks communicate by getting right to the bottom line. And there are some folks who communicate by giving you all of these details on top of details on top of details. And how do we adjust based on that interaction? Well, for us, when we go into organizations that are having difficulty communicating with each other, there are several tools we use to get people to understand their work styles and their work behaviors and the way they communicate, the way they listen to each other. One of the most popular ones is our DISC profile. For those who've used DISC over the years, it's the DISC. It used to be a graph. Now it's the circle, the Everything Workplace circle. And we use the Everything DISC Workplace in a variety, as we've talked about many times, a variety of environments. But in this particular environment, we use it with kind of frontline staff. And we've been doing a lot of work over the last several months with a couple of organizations and rolling out DISC, either by us delivering it or someone internally delivering it to a lot of frontline staff, And for those frontline staff who have never experienced, whether it's DISC, Myers-Briggs, whether it's a strong assessment, but they just have never experienced an assessment before in their lives, this is an eye-opening experience. They come to the class, they read through the report, and they get that aha moment, first about themselves, because they're like, oh, yeah, this is like me. Oh, yeah, I really do this. But it's starting to understand why, when they try to communicate in this approach, why Mary, John, and Sue give them kind of the funny eyes. What is this guy talking about? Or what is this girl talking about? They start to realize that they need to start tailoring their communications, depending on who they're communicating with, a little differently based on the conversation they're having and the goals they want to get out of that conversation. And so we use this to get them to understand themselves, and they practice some activities and practicing around themselves. And then we do some activities around communicating with the different styles. So we put folks in groups, DISC, and we do some activities around communicating and understanding and adapting your approach. But it makes them feel a lot more comfortable going into those situations when they are approaching somebody who's from a different style. So if I'm a DI and I'm communicating with somebody who's SC, how do I tailor my communication? So from a peer-to-peer and teamwork perspective, the DISC tool is very, very helpful in those instances in getting people to understand the different communication style, how to tailor communication differently. They even take it down to the customer level. We work with a lot of government contractors who are physically on contracts. And again, they learn about the folks that work around them at the site. And how do I communicate my presentation based on the needs of others, not the needs of myself. So there's that peer-to-peer, working with customers interaction that's very, very helpful in using the DISC. The other thing we use the DISC for is with supervisory and leadership development. At first, as an understanding of my behaviors and the way I interact and communicate with those that report directly to me. And in those instances, the DISC tool and other tools are very, 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 very important in getting people to understand how their behaviors and the way they communicate impact those that work around them. Depending what style you are, the way you communicate with those that report directly to you is going to impact their performance. And how do we get them to perform at a higher level? We encourage supervisors and managers and leaders to adapt that communication, adapt that motivation, adapt that directing of those employees in part based on style. So when you're doing that delegation, the employee feels that you're really talking to them in a way that they can be more responsive. And that really helps out a lot. It helps out both from a supervisory managerial approach, but it also helps out in how the employee feels about the direction you're giving them, how they're going to perform based on that direction, and the feedback you're going to give them based on them completing the task. So if you can tailor the communication of the feedback to the employee based on how they like to receive that feedback, then you're taking your employees to a whole next level. I had a meeting last week with one of our really good customers. We were talking about this whole supervisory and employee communication and working through some of these communication issues and working through some of these conflict issues. And they were telling me that the leadership from their organization was telling them that they were saving a lot of funds in grievances and in these feedback meetings and lost work time because managers who were trained using DISC as a part of a understanding how to communicate better with their employees tool and part of a program, that they were seeing a lot less disruption in the workplace. They were seeing a lot more productivity in the workplace because leaders and supervisors were taking an intentional approach to adapting their communication style based on the needs of the employee. So it's very, very important that you have these conversations and you build these relationships in the workplace that are positive. It's very difficult to get things done in the workplace when there's anxiety and when there's fear and when there's conflict in the workplace, when you're actually afraid to talk to somebody because I made something that may get them off or tick them off. You have to be really, really, really ready for that. So using the DISC and others as a tool to better communicate in the workplace is very important. So I scan through my notes here, make sure I got everything. Yeah, so continue building good relationships, continue to use DISC and other tools to better communicate. We also use a tool, and with some of our teams, it's an effective listening tool, which I may spend some more time on in another session. We have a tool that measures 5 different approaches to listening, everything from empathic to comprehensive to discerning listening. So sometimes it's using the right listening approach, using the right body language to make sure that you're getting the information you need and displaying that information you need to those you work with, especially in the face-to-face interaction. So I see we're coming up to about 11 and a half minutes up on the clock. I try to keep these under 15 minutes. I do want to let you know just a couple things before we go. Next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing a session on the PXT Select Assessment. I'm doing a live webinar. So for those of you who are not able to come to our executive briefing, they want to come to the live webinar, just ping me here. I appreciate the feedback I'm getting. I'm getting some good feedback on these Mondays with Michael live. So thanks. Keep sending that feedback to me. I really, really appreciate it. Our talk next Monday, my Mondays with Michael live next Monday, will be on behavior-based interviewing. We work with a lot of clients who are really looking for lots of people, especially here in Northern Virginia. And they also have a lot of turnover. We talked about the PXT Select as a tool to help them, but we're going to talk about behavior-based interviewing, how to really prepare your organization to do behavior-based interviewing, and more importantly, how do you prepare your leaders and managers so that they're prepared to do behavior-based interviewing. So we'll talk about some of the things we've done, some of the things we've seen, some of the tools we provide clients, and helping them prepare a behavior-based interviewing program. So that's all for today. I really appreciate you hanging out here in the room with me. For those of you who are watching this post-session, thanks for checking out the video, and we'll see you next Monday with here in the room, Mondays with Michael live here at Facebook. Take care. Thanks for checking us out. Bye-bye.